I hope the other guy looks worse, Maria said, tilting her head to get a better look at my face. The other guy, I said softly. Can you work? Yeah, but I probably need to avoid seeing clients face to face for a while. She nodded, and then I saw her lips tighten. I assume there's a police report? I nodded. Any chance you'll be arrested? No, I doubt it. I wasn't really a victim, but I can't imagine anything will come of it. All right, she said softly. We'll do without it. Oh, and Tommy? I looked at her, wondering if she was going to lecture me or give me a hug. She always gave the impression of a stern old librarian, but those who knew her realized she cared deeply for others. Please learn to duck, she said, unable to hold back a smile. The laughter in her eyes gave her away. So I've been told, I said, grinning. Fortunately, I managed to spend the rest of the day working. Barring some good-natured teasing from Jonas and Armand, things quickly returned to normal. After a couple days, Angie got a glimpse of me, and while Maria was hard to read, Angie wasn't. Her face was a mixture of anger and guilt. She was angry at me for not calling her that night in the ER, and then felt guilty when she realized it was Bill and his cronies who had groomed me. It took a little time, but I convinced her it was my fault. If I hadn't hit him, maybe it wouldn't have happened. I ended up being reminded repeatedly that we are friends, and friends call friends when they are in trouble. I realized she was trying to make me feel better, but every time she called us friends, I felt like she was emphasizing that that was all we would ever be. After our conversation, I focused on building my personal life. I had finally come to terms with the fact that Angie has her own personal life, and I wasn't going to be a part of it. We would only remain good friends, and I had to learn to live with that. It was hard, but I got through it. Sure, I fantasized about Angie sometimes, but I started looking for more realistic possibilities. There were several women at the gym who were of interest to me, and I started going to them and talking to them more and more often. There were also women I met at work who didn't seem to mind going out with me. I started going on occasional dates, and a couple of them ended with me going back to my apartment. Unforgettable, I grinned to myself. Only slightly better than a one-night stand. One of the bright spots was Tara. As we continued practicing, I found it harder and harder not to stare at her. She was really trying her best, and it was noticeable. Thanks, Tommy boy, she said. Oh shit, Tara. I sighed. Did I stare again? She nodded and grinned. Tara, I'm sorry. Tommy boy, I don't mind. It's been a while since I've been stared at like that. I snorted. I doubt it. Well, she said, blushing. Yeah, but that was a long time ago, when it was a nice guy doing it, not some creep or horny guy. We both laughed, but for different reasons. She laughed because she was complimenting me and was happy with the situation. I laughed because I was trying to hide my annoyance. Safe. Amazing. Damn it, I was starting to hate those words. For the next 6 weeks, I tried to work as hard as Tara did. Eventually, I reached my goal of 60 pounds, and Tara lost 30 pounds. It didn't look like she'd get to 40 by the time I started, but she was close. Since I had gained weight, I made a date with Angie. We had a friendly relationship. The only real difference was that I didn't pant after her like a dog. If she did notice, she never said anything about it. Erica turned 5, started kindergarten, and that allowed Angie to start taking classes at St. Catherine's School. She started working on becoming a physical therapist. When I picked her up, I met Erica at the front door. Tommy Bear, she squealed. Hi, Goldilocks! I reached down and picked her up. Are you asking your mom out on a date? Yeah, that's the plan. Can I come with you too? Not this time, honey, said an older woman behind her. She was a thin, frail woman who looked to be in her mid-60s. Wearing huge bifocal glasses and with short gray hair, she looked like a grandmother. Monica Harper, she said, holding out her hand. I shook it and marveled at how tight her grip was. Tommy Swanson, I replied. I know, Mrs. Harper smiled. I've heard all about Tommy Bear in the men's room. I moaned. She laughed. It's amazing what little eyes and ears pick up. By the way, you look very nice today, Mr. Swanson, she continued, then reached out and fixed my tie. Thank you. I dressed up in a suit and tie as I took Angie to Devesto's on the square. By losing weight, I was able to wear some of my best clothes from college. When Angie came out of the bedroom, I almost choked. She was wearing a simple string of pearls with her version of a little black dress, but it was stunning. I had to remind myself that we were only going out as friends before I embarrassed myself by drooling. That's how the whole evening went, me reminding myself that this wasn't a real date. Angie did nothing to make me think differently, and I gradually relaxed, deciding it was just a normal evening with a beautiful woman. Devesto's restaurant was incredible and expensive, but that was expected. My beautiful date was well worth it. During our entire time at the restaurant, Angie was only harassed once, and that was when she was returning from the ladies' restroom. It was a completely different story when we decided to go dancing and went to Strobe on the square. We didn't even have time to sit down before she was asked to dance. It was the first of several dozen times. Surprisingly, Angie declined every one of them, even after I reminded her that we were only here as friends tonight. She reminded me that she had done the same thing when we went out for 4th of July. Her reasoning was simple. She was with me and wasn't going to make a date with anyone else. The only time I had a hard time that night was when I hugged her tightly as we danced to slow songs. Unfortunately, those slow songs were too short and were played very infrequently during the evening. The evening ended with a kiss on the cheek. Thank you, Tommy boy, she said quietly. It's been a long time since I've been on such a fun date. You were the perfect gentleman. Now another phrase had been added to my list of annoying labels, in addition to nice and safe, perfect gentleman. Soon after, I decided that I needed to get serious about finding a man I could fall in love with and spend the rest of my life with. I mentally chose a few options and vowed to myself to ask them out within the next week. As usual, fate had other ideas. The first disruption to my plans had to do with work. Setting up the network took up all of my time except for practicing with Angie and Tara. Second, even though classes at St. Catherine's started 2 weeks early, Tara reached her weight goal. I had the honor of setting up a date with her for this coming Friday night. She asked me to pick her up at her apartment, which she shared with 2 of her friends. When I stopped by to pick up Tara, I was shocked. Damn, girl, I said, stepping back and ostentatiously looking her over from head to toe. It's amazing what you can accomplish with makeup, don't you think? I think all that stuff can certainly help, but only if you already have something to start with. And you, Tara, already have something. You're beautiful. Her dark brown eyes danced and her smile was dazzling. Apparently, this big dumb animal can say the right thing every now and then. I took her out to eat and was surprised when she suggested Sherman's Wharf, a small seafood joint just off the highway. Definitely not high-end, but a good place for freshwater fish and shellfish. I expected her to want to go to one of Brownwood's more upscale establishments, like Devesto's or Maison Le Rouge. She must have seen my surprise and laughed. Tommy boy, I plan to dance till I drop tonight. A salad at the wharf will be just fine. Besides, I can barely breathe in this thing, and if I eat anything heavy, it might explode. You say that like it's a bad thing, I said, laughing. I wish. She giggled, but continued to look at me with her smoky gaze. This is your night, beautiful. Your wish is my command. Well then, good sir, she said in a haughty voice. Is my carriage waiting? After you, my lady, I said, giving a deep bow. She was right. Our citrus salads with greens and grilled shrimp were the perfect start to a night of dancing. Tara had chosen the club scene at Strobe, which was fine with me, since my past experience at City Lights was still a little fresh in my mind. The evening started off amazingly. Tara looked really good and was attracting the attention of a few guys. When the first one approached to ask her to dance, she surprised me by looking at me and asking my permission. Of course I gave it, but afterward I asked her about it. Tara, thank you for asking me, but remember this is your night. If you want to dance with a guy, I certainly won't stand in your way. She looked at me with disappointment for a moment. Tommy boy, you are my companion for this evening, and I always leave with the one who brought me. And if I can dance with any guy I want, you need to get off your ass and get on the dance floor with me. That set the tone for the next couple hours, with Tara dancing with me most of the time, but also occasionally dancing with another guy. All in all, we were having a great time, but as with all good things, there's always a bug that tries to ruin everything. This time, it was a pest from my past. I didn't notice her until I heard her voice from behind us. "Oh my God, look at you," snarled her voice. "It looks like you finally pushed yourself off the buffet." I turned and saw Susie standing there looking like a star. It was an image she knew how to create with ease and ease. She was accompanied by two men. The first was a tall, well-built blond man about my age, dressed in a several $1,000 Italian suit. He looked European and had a snotty, smug expression on his face. The other was a short man of slight build who reminded me of a middle-aged Johnny Depp trying to look like a bookworm. I recognized him as one of the Hawthorns. I'd seen him at the Strobe several times over the past year. He observed our situation with an indifferent look. "Oh dear," I replied in a mocking tone. "Looks like the herpes sores have finally healed. Did you finally get rid of all those little things, or did you just accept it as a curse for being a slut?" "Screw you," she grinned. "I already told you never again. And besides," I said in response to her chuckle, "I doubt you've cracked 20. Her fair-haired companion, who had stepped toward me, now looked at me with pure hatred. Hawthorne put a hand on his shoulder and shook his head. "Easy, Hans," I hissed. "All I was doing was enjoying my date until I was proposed to by that, lady. By the way, if you two are going out with her tonight, I'd be sure to check her medical records. I'm sure some of these things are not curable." I saw the large European's face go pale and noticed a small smirk on the bookworm's face. "I see you've been moving up in weight classes for dating lately," Susie teased, looking at Tara. I saw the resentment in Tara's eyes. I walked over and took her hand. That was enough for her to look away from Susie briefly and look into my eyes. What she saw there made her smile. I turned around and grinned at Susie. "Shit, Susie," I laughed. "It must hurt to realize that a woman you consider beneath you can, with just a smile, get a guy. You may look good on the outside, but everyone who knows you knows what a rotting, vile slut you are on the inside. Your ex-husband is damn lucky he left you." "You," she began to yell, drawing the attention of several other tables. "You goddamn—" "Stop it!" roared Hawthorne in a voice much deeper and stronger than I expected. "Jurgen, please take the lady back to our table," Hawthorne ordered. Jurgen glared at me, but then complied and led a furious Susie away. When they were gone, Hawthorne turned to Tara and me. "My apologies," he said. "I didn't mean to ruin your evening. I didn't understand her plans when she led us to your table. Please allow me to make it up to you." With those words, he disappeared into the crowd. A few minutes later, one of the waitresses escorted us to the VIP area, where a bottle of champagne was waiting for us. "Oh, hell yeah," giggled Tara. "Now that's more like it." For the next hour, we laughed and danced and forgot about our little run-in with Susie the slut. After leaving the club, we decided to take a leisurely stroll around the town square. The September night was warmer than usual, but it was nice to cool off after a few hours of dancing in the club. Despite the mild weather, Tara used it as an excuse to snuggle up to us. At the end of our walk, I put my arm around her and kissed her. She looked at me, and I couldn't figure out what she was thinking. All I could see in her eyes was the faint flicker of the streetlights. However, her voice told me what I wanted to know. "Take me to your apartment," she whispered hoarsely. We barely made it into my apartment before we were immediately on the bed. Next chapter. It was over a week before I met up with Angie again. The network installation took the better part of a week and involved long, boring hours of cable work. During the session, I could sense that she had something to say. By the end of the training session, I couldn't take it anymore. Okay, Angie, I gasped, still trying to catch my breath. Say what you need to say. What did you do to that girl? She asked calmly. I knew immediately that she was talking about Tara. I had spoken to Tara several times last week. First to thank her for a wonderful evening, and then to make sure she didn't think of me as a one-night stand. I even asked her out on a date, but told her it would have to be after my networking project was complete. She seemed to understand and was interested in going on a date with me again, so Angie's question made me a little uneasy. Why? I asked worriedly. Is she okay? Angie snorted. Better than okay, she said, laughing. Tommy boy, she's just floating in the air. What exactly did you do? I'm sorry, Angie, but that's something Tara should tell you about. I'll say I treated her like she was special, which she really is. Well, you certainly made an impression. She gave me a wary look. You realize she'll be yours if you just ask her. She thinks you're walking on water right now. I laughed. Well, it won't be for long. Soon she'll see that I have feet of clay. I don't see us living long. She's too young for me. She's got her whole life ahead of her, and she doesn't need an old guy with all that baggage dragging her down. An old guy like you? Angie grinned. Well, old compared to her. I wish I was younger, though, because she's special. She has an incredible amount of beauty in her just waiting to be let out. Any guy who falls for her and takes the time to find her will be rewarded with a woman who will rock his world. I turned and looked at Angie as she had fallen silent. She had a strange look on her face as she looked at me. What? I asked, not understanding anything. Nothing, she replied, and gathered her things to leave. You're unusual, Tommy boy. I didn't know what to say to that. At least she didn't call me nice or safe. Next chapter. For the next month and a half, I struggled to break the 70-pound barrier, but I finally succeeded. Tara and I went on several dates and had a great time both in and out of the bedroom. Besides the incredible feeling of waking up with a warm, soft woman by my side, we quickly became friends. But even with all that, I knew we weren't going to be together. There was a spark between us, but it wasn't as strong as it was with Leah. The last time we went out, it was a little bittersweet and humorous. I took her to a Crusaders soccer game with me. We enjoyed ourselves and each other's company, even though we both realized that our relationship was turning from romantic to merely friendly. As we walked to our seats, I noticed Tara constantly looking over my shoulder. I followed her gaze. A short guy who looked like a weirdo was looking at us. That's Sean, Tara snorted. I'm sure he's still pissed. Well, if you wanted to show him what he's lost, you did a great job of it. Tara, you look great. Oh, she cooed and glared. That's so sweet. She looked back at her ex-boyfriend and waved him off. She giggled. I'm sure that's not what he was so upset about. I might have told some people he was tiny. She looked up at me and smiled slyly. Okay, I'll admit it was probably a bunch of my girlfriends, girls from most of my classes, a few sorority girls, and maybe a few thousand people on Facebook and Twitter. In some circles, I might be considered a fat slut, she continued, but I'm only a slut to the people I care about, and the fat part, well, I'm working on that. Damn, girl, remind me not to get all pissy on you. Oh, please, Tommy boy, you've already seen my bad side. In fact, you've seen all sides of me. Oh, yes, I said softly and smiled. Get down, boy, she said, laughing. I don't like public. Well, at least I don't think so. I snorted, but she interrupted my train of thought. But it would still only be entertainment, wouldn't it, Tommy boy? No, Tara, I said softly. It won't just be entertainment. I know we care about each other, but not enough to make a lifetime commitment, right? Tara, It's okay, Tommy boy. It really is. I know we love each other, but more as friends than lovers. I hope you know how much I care for you and how grateful I am. I hope I have shown you how much I appreciate what you have done for me. Much more than I could have hoped for, beautiful. Good. she said, looking intently into my eyes. No guy has ever treated me the way you do, like I'm some kind of special. Tara, you are special. You're going to be the center of some lucky guy's world when you find the right guy. Get down, boy. We need to watch the game. I groaned softly and she laughed. It took a little while, but we finally settled into our seats. During the game, a bunch of her friends joined us. I suddenly felt very old. One of her friends was an interesting guy. He had multiple tattoos on each arm and on his neck. His dark hair was combed back with blue tips, and he had a piercing in his nose. All in all, he looked like a half-goth. But even despite his appearance, what caught my attention was his gaze. It wasn't the same as Tara's ex-boyfriend's, but it still gave me goosebumps. I told Tara about it after the game. We won, by the way. 24-0. Go Crusaders. Oh, it's Jeremy, Tara said, and blushed slightly. Don't let the piercings and tattoos fool you. He's a really, really nice guy. He's into music and knows a lot about electronics. He's already working part-time as a sound engineer at a recording studio. Tara, I said soothingly, we're no exception. I care about you, even if we remain just friends. She smiled and hugged me tightly. I think he wants to ask me out, she said, smiling. He has great taste. Her smile grew even brighter. A week later, I found out they were dating. Next chapter. In November, I had to work hard to lose the last 10 pounds. I think I worked out 4 times a week and cut back hard on my diet, but 4 days before Thanksgiving, I gained weight. Angie contacted me earlier in the week. She and Erica were going to be staying in Brownwood for Thanksgiving and wanted to know if I wanted to join them. I had already told my family that I wouldn't be able to go back to Wisconsin this year, so I happily agreed. Angie said that right after Eric left them, she started trying to start new Thanksgiving traditions with Eric. Before Thanksgiving dinner, they would somehow help those less fortunate. I loved it and volunteered to go with them. Late Thanksgiving morning, Angie, Erica, and I were handing out turkey dinners to the homeless at the Lighthouse Mission. The mission was located in the poorest and most crime-ridden part of Brownwood, in the southwest corner of town. This neighborhood generally began at the corner of State Park Road, running north and south, and Old Southtown Road, running east and west. On the corner was Candy Cane's Brownwood's premier strip club and a biker bar called the Ice House. A block to the east was Southtown Projects, the main public housing in the area. The Lighthouse Mission was a couple blocks south on State Park Road. As we drove there, I noticed Angie looking at Candy Cane. I could tell she was experiencing very mixed emotions. It seemed to me that her eyes read lust and desire mixed with sadness and pain. Since it was the holidays, I left her alone. I'm ashamed to admit it, but when we first came to the mission, I was wary. I overprotected Angie and Erica until Angie pulled me aside and laughingly told me to relax. As I relaxed, I was amazed at how mother and daughter lightened up all around me. I shouldn't have been surprised, because beautiful women like Angie usually do it naturally, even if they are dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. Erica's casual demeanor won the hearts of most everyone present, staff and guests alike. When she climbed into the lap of an older bearded man, I started to walk over until Angie touched my arm and nodded for me to just watch. I swear the smile on this old man's face as Erica laughed and giggled humbled me to the point where my heart was breaking. Tommy boy, I chided myself. You're such a spoiled, judgmental asshole. The rest of the morning went smoothly, and I got to know several of the staff and more people who had come in that day. The only notable incident occurred when I caught Erica devouring a cup of mashed potatoes and gravy. When I asked her if she was supposed to do that, she grinned as she looked at me, and gravy dripped from her chin. It's okay, Tommy Bear. She giggled. They said I could have some. Besides, she whispered loudly, Mom made dinner. It'll be better that way. I suppressed a laugh, as did a few people around us. I was surprised again when we finally sat down at Angie's house at the table. Angie wasn't a bad cook, in fact, she was a very good cook. It was what we were eating that explained Erica's previous comment. It wasn't what you might call a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. There was no huge turkey or mashed potatoes and gravy. There was no buttered corn, cranberry sauce from a can, green bean casserole, sweet potatoes, and pumpkin pie. Instead, there was spicy kale salad, curried pumpkin soup, apple parsnip puree, kale and pumpkin stuffing, and herb-stuffed turkey breast. Surprisingly, everything was delicious. In fact, some of the dishes were even better than good. Angie glowed when I praised her. As we were cleaning up, I noticed Angie looking at me. "Thank you," she said quietly, so Erica wouldn't hear. I looked at her and realized I wasn't quite sure what she was thanking me for. She smiled, realizing my dilemma. "Thank you for trusting me," she continued, "and not trying to stuff yourself with mashed potatoes and gravy on a mission. Yes, I know my little monster isn't crazy about healthy food." We both laughed, and I told her again how wonderful the dinner had been. Then I mentioned that I had reached my goal of 80 pounds. "Okay," she said dryly. "I already bought a dress. I think you won't be disappointed. I've also booked 2 tickets to the ball for us." We looked at each other in silence until she smiled at me. I felt like my world was about to shake. I spent the entire next week getting everything ready. Tickets to the Christmas ball were expensive, but that was no surprise. I knew this date was going to cost me a fortune. I rented a tuxedo and even a limo and tried not to worry too much. When the night of the Christmas ball came, I was as nervous as a kid going to his first ball. I knocked on the front door, and Mrs. Harper answered. "Mr. Swanson," she exclaimed, "you look very elegant tonight." "Mrs. Harper, you look as lovely as ever," I replied. "Oh, shit," she said, and covered her mouth, hoping Erica hadn't overheard. We both turned around and saw that Erica was busy doing something else. Looking at each other, we both giggled. "Tommy Swanson," Mrs. Harper said, shaking her head. "I'd warn you not to be so obvious when you're trying to flatter Angie, but I saw her dress." She grinned mischievously. A pouting Erica walked into the room with her bottom lip sticking out. I had to hold back a laugh. "Mommy has a beautiful blue dress and I don't—" "Hey, Goldilocks," I said, kneeling down. "How about we go get it at the store later?" "Okay," she said quietly, hugging me. "But it won't be as pretty as Mommy's." "Well, I'm sure we can find something close. I'm sure you'll be as beautiful as— Oh my God." I looked up and thought I had an angel in front of me. If she wanted to look like a grown-up version of a fairy tale princess, she had outdone herself. She was so stunning that I just couldn't speak. The effect her appearance had on me was obvious as I stood stunned. Angie glowed even more, and Mrs. Harper laughed. "Angie," I finally managed to mutter, "you look incredible." "Thank you," she said, smiling widely. "I hope you're not disappointed." "Impossible," I said, taking her hand and leading her to the limo. The Hawthorne Hotel was fully decorated for the season. The old landmark was decorated for the Christmas ball in all its splendor. Even with the lavish decorations and the crowd of people dressed in tuxedos and beautiful ball gowns, Angie attracted an incredible amount of attention when she stepped out of the limo. Was she the most beautiful woman ever? I thought so. And if she wasn't, she had to be in the top 3. The evening started off great as I led her out onto the dance floor of the ballroom. I saw some familiar people, as this was one of the major events of the year in Brownwood. I even got to see Susie briefly. She looked gorgeous and was surrounded by several expensively dressed older men. Thankfully, I avoided her. Angie and I were sitting at our table, taking a rare break on the dance floor, when a man came up behind Angie and asked her to dance. "I'm sorry," Angie replied, still looking at me. "But I—" When she turned to her potential suitor, she froze. "Daniel?" she said quietly. "Angela," he replied, smiling warmly. Angie's answer made me look more closely at the man. He looked good, and the tuxedo he was wearing was expensive. He looked to be in his early 30s and had the impeccable looks of a model. He was about my height and very trim. He also had a face that I recognized but couldn't identify. The only thing that alerted me was that he kept his eyes on Angie. I wasn't even in his field of vision. Angie took care of that right away. "Daniel, this is Tommy," she said, looking at me. I couldn't read the myriad of emotions on her face. "Tommy boy," Daniel said, smiling and holding out his hand to me. "I've heard a lot about you. Congratulations on losing so much weight." I stood up and shook his hand. "My apologies, sir. You put me at a disadvantage. I haven't heard anything about you, and I don't know who you are." I noticed the flash of irritation in his eyes before he dropped the mask he was showing off to the audience. "Of course," he said, and his smile returned. "My name is Daniel Pickering." "Mr. Pickering, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've recovered. I've heard good things about you." "Only good things, I hope," he said, laughing. I had heard of Daniel J. Pickering. He was a famous lawyer from the city. He was known as a playboy and had serious political ambitions. In short, he was a shark. A very attractive and well-funded shark, but a shark nonetheless. "Angela," he said, turning to Angie again. "You look absolutely stunning tonight." "Thank you, Dan. That's very kind of you. However, I have to decline the offer to dance. I'm here with Tommy, and my dance card is full." "Sure, but you can't blame a guy for asking such a beautiful woman to dance. Tommy boy, it was a pleasure to meet you." "You too, Dan. The pleasure is all mine," I said, not hiding my insincerity. After he left, Angie asked me if I would take her for a walk outside the ballroom. Naturally, I agreed. I offered her my hand, and she took it as we left the table. We walked down to the hotel atrium in silence. I could hear her intermittent breathing as she tried to keep her composure. When we were far enough away from the others, she stopped and turned to face me. "Tommy," she said quietly with tears in her eyes, "I'm so sorry. I can't believe he treated you like that." She shook her head, fighting back tears. "That bastard!" she hissed. "That arrogant bastard! He knew I'd be here with you tonight." "Your friend, I presume?" I laughed, trying to calm her down. When I saw her eyes widen, I realized. "Oh," I said softly, "that friend." "He's not usually like this," she whispered. "He's usually a really nice guy, but lately he's been getting more and more possessive." "Angie, I really don't need to know that," I stated calmly. "I know, but I'd like you to know." "Okay." I nodded. "I knew Daniel before Eric ran away. Actually, I'm familiar with most of the people gathered here today, since Eric made sure we met every influential person we encountered." After Eric left, Daniel and I became friends. He helped me get my life together. Tommy, Dan and I were never exclusive partners, although sometimes I felt like we were. He is very single-minded in his political pursuits and enjoys the public's attention. I don't want that kind of life and would never subject Eric to such a media circus. Dan also likes variety in his dating. I know of at least a dozen women he's dated in the last 3 years. Angie, you don't need to explain. You've been very upfront and clear that we're only going to be friends. I understand, and I'm fine with that. Your friendship with Erica has become very important to me. You are also very important to us. That's why I wanted you to know about my relationship with Dan. I'm ashamed that he treated you like that. He had no right. Then he called you Tommy Boy, like he was talking to a child. I want you to know that I only mentioned you twice. The first time was when we made the weight loss agreement. I felt like he should know, because with his position, rumors or something like that might have gotten to him. The second time was when I told him I was going to the store to get a dress. This dress. Tommy, I never talk about you behind your back. Understand? Okay, Angie, I said softly. I'm not upset, not offended, and I don't mind being called Tommy Boy. Mr. Pickering would have to do a lot worse than that to hurt my feelings. Angie, I'm just an average Joe dating the most beautiful woman in Brownwood. Of course people are going to look and judge. I put up with it because you made tonight special for me. Not just because of the way you look, but because you respected and honored my feelings all evening. That is something special, Miss Miles, and I am deeply grateful to you for that. Now, since our evening is not yet over, I would like to dance with you. Why don't we stop in the restroom outside the ballroom so you can freshen up? She smiled, reached up and kissed me on the cheek. Thank you, Tommy boy. Thank you for being so understanding. You're welcome, Angie, I said with a low growl. Please don't tell me I'm a gentleman or a nice guy. I really don't want to be reminded of how safe I am tonight. She stared at me for a moment, then smiled. Okay, stud, she said, grinning. Let's go dance. We started walking back to the ballroom. I hoped we could get back into the spirit of the evening. Angie said she would need some time to put on her makeup, so I should sit down or go back to the ballroom. I said I would wait for her right there. I saw and greeted a few acquaintances walking by as I tried desperately to wait patiently. Then I heard an unwanted voice. Wow, you've changed, said a voice behind me. You've lost a lot of weight. I slowly turned around and forced myself to smile politely. Leah, I said without emotion, you look good. It was a small lie. She was still attractive, but the elegant black dress she was wearing couldn't hide the extra weight. She had clearly gained a few more pounds. Standing next to her was the bookworm I had encountered at the strobe. He was very well dressed. And I did lose weight, I continued. About 140 pounds right after my divorce. Recently, however, I've lost another 80 pounds. Was that rude? Probably, but I didn't feel like sitting here trying to fake that bitch. Obviously, my answer stunned Leah and her companion. While I didn't feel like playing nice with her, I had nothing against him. Hello, I said, casually extending my hand. My name is Tom Swanson. I don't think we were properly introduced last time we met. Theo, he said, with a small smile, clearly sizing me up. Theo Hawthorne. Well, Theo, it was nice to meet you, but I have to get back to my date. What? Leah said coldly. That inflatable Barbie you danced with? What did you hire her for the evening? I stared at her for a moment, then decided against it. It seems, Mr. Swanson, Theo said, smiling, you have a pretty good influence on the ladies. Only on some, Mr. Hawthorne, I said, smiling back at him. But taste doesn't count, does it? Hey, babe, Angie's voice came from behind me. Miss me? More than you can imagine, I said. Sorry it took so long, she said. Angie looked at Leah and gave her a glare before pulling away, snorting. Oh, what games women play, I thought to myself, and smiled. At least this time I wasn't the mouse the two cats were playing with. Angie looked at Theo and smiled politely. Hi, Theo. How's the family? We're fine, Miss Miles, Hawthorne replied, holding back a smile. Thanks for asking. I saw the surprise written all over Leah's face. Angie returned her attention to me and looked into my eyes. Her eyes darted around for a moment before her sweet smile turned into a sly one. I realized that I may have spoken too soon about not being a mouse. By the way, honey, she cooed, I've thought of a few more ways we can burn some extra calories tonight. So, she spoke again, shall we dance some more before we get into a more serious workout? I was confused, but thankfully I was able to nod. She took my hand and began to lead me back into the ballroom. I stopped abruptly and slowly turned to Leah. By the way, I said quietly, I saw your girlfriend, Susie the Slut, in the ballroom tonight. I was a little surprised. Considering how many Beamers, Lexuses, and Benzes I saw tonight, I figured she'd be working in the parking lot, scoping out new customers. Theo snorted and tried to hide a smile when Leah threw him a quick glance. I turned and led Angie back to the ballroom. What a bitch, hissed Angie quietly as we danced. I can't believe her. Angie, I grinned. Bitches, sluts, and harlots. Oh my God. Asshole, Angie said, snorting and laughing. Tease, I said. When the dance was over, she stepped back, giggling. You were saying? She said, grinning from ear to ear. Said, actually, I was thinking about something until the blood rushed to my waist. I take it you know Theo Hawthorne? Angie laughed. Tommy boy, I know a few Hawthorns. I also know a lot of Bragghams and Thorpes, and needless to say, I know almost all the Rutherfords in the area. Eric has made an effort to meet and socialize with all the blue bloods of Brownwood. I also know several people from the Navarro and Collins families. Eric didn't pursue them as much because he thought they were too provincial. You do realize that it was Priscilla Rutherford that Eric ran off with, don't you? I shook my head. I'm sorry, I didn't know who was involved. Well, I'm still on good terms with most of those families, since the scandal only tarnished the Rutherford family. Wow, I said softly. You never told me you were not only famous, but gorgeous. She snorted, then laughed. Soon we were both smirking silently at each other. The rest of the evening went great. I cuddled and danced with the girl of my dreams. I felt like Cinderella as the ball came to an end. I know I was a little depressed as we got into the limo to go back to Angie's. I was so consumed with my disappointment that the evening was coming to an end that I didn't notice Angie was quiet as well. When she spoke, it brought me out of my reverie. Tommy boy, what are we going to do next? Well, at first I thought I'd take you home. She laughed ringingly. Next chapter. Saturday morning, I accompanied 2 Christmas elves to Sacred Heart Hospital for the children's Christmas party. The little one was the cutest elf ever. Her mom was dressed just like her. Oh my goodness. When we got to the pediatric ward, there were 40 or 50 people there. There weren't more than a dozen patients. The rest were relatives and hospital staff. Erica jumped up to one of the little girls and spoke to her. An orange-haired nurse walked over to us. Angie, Bree whispered. We may have a little problem. Teddy got sick last night and couldn't make it tonight. We need to find a replacement for Santa. I usually ask my Zach to fill in for him, but he's out of town this weekend. At the very least, I'm sure one of the fathers will agree to do it. That's okay, Angie said, grinning. I'm sure we can find someone else to play Santa for a couple hours. Both women turned and stared at me. The way they both smiled left no doubt that I was Mouse this time. 10 minutes later, I was Santa. It wasn't that bad. The one-size suit didn't get in the way. I even felt good when I had to use extra padding around the middle to fill it out. Then there were the kids. Damn. No child should spend Christmas in the hospital. Most would agree with that, but that's not life, is it? I spent the next hour laughing and bantering with the kids, and then I made a mistake. I went up to each child and asked them what they wanted for Christmas. I first approached those who were bedridden, and then let those who could sit on my lap. Most of the kids were almost shouting out their Christmas wishes, while others had to whisper them in my ear. Hell, Santa shouldn't cry, but some of their wishes were tearing my heart out. I looked at Angie and saw the same tears in her eyes. I pretended to be cheerful all the way through and even handed out a few small gifts. Then I made my grand exit. Walking into the back room, I sank into a chair, emotionally drained. Angie and Bree followed me and thanked me over and over again. Angie told me there was another girl who wanted to sit on Santa's lap. Ho, 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 girl, I said, grinning. You want to sit on Santa's lap and tell him what you want for Christmas? Of course, that would only work if you were really good. Or really bad. Angie giggled. In your dreams, Santa? Both women laughed. Oh, I replied, much to their delight. Now, Angie said, smiling. I'm going to go get her. Angie? She knows it's me, doesn't she? She looked at me and smiled. No, I told her you're looking after Santa's sleigh while he's here. She opened the door, then stopped and looked at me seductively over her shoulder. By the way, Santa, she cooed, I've been a very, very good girl this year. I groaned, and Bree laughed. Moments later, Angie returned with Erica and several hospital staff members. Erica jumped into my lap and smiled. Hi, Santa. Remember me? She chirped. Oh, yes, I said in my Santa voice. I've been watching you very closely. Her eyes got huge. Oh, yes, I continued. I always enjoy watching good little girls. Erica smiled, and I looked over at her mother, and saw Angie and Bree laughing and rolling their eyes. Erica chatted for a couple more minutes and then got very serious. Looking up at me, she asked if she could make her Christmas wish. I nodded. She crawled over to me and whispered in my ear, "Santa, for Christmas, I wish I had a real daddy." I choked up as she settled back into my lap. That stupid son of a bitch. How could he abandon that precious little girl and her awesome mom? Damn, and I thought I could be stupid. "Oh, I forgot," she said, and crawled up to me again to whisper in my ear. "And a pink bicycle." "Well, we'll see what Santa can do with the latter," I said, grinning. "The first one, on the other hand, will have to wait. Santa will have to find someone special for such a good Goldilocks." She looked at me, and her eyes got big with recognition. "Santa Bear?" she said, giggling. "Ho, ho, ho." I said loudly, and then whispered back to her, "Just don't tell anyone." She squealed and laughed, and then crawled down. "My turn," Angie said, grinning evilly. Erica came over and took Bree's hand, and her mom came over and sat on my lap. Several hooting and cheers erupted from the audience. I swear, the only thing on my mind at that moment was, damn it, I hate this lining. "So, girl, what do you want for Christmas?" I said loudly, trying not to get out of character, much to the audience's delight. "Well," she stretched out and then whispered in my ear, "I have a suggestion." "I don't think Mrs. Claus would agree to that," said I loudly. Our audience laughed again. Angie smiled and whispered in my ear again, "You earn your £100 and I'll give you a lap dance you'll never forget." I couldn't suppress a loud groan. The audience erupted in laughter as Angie grinned triumphantly, stood up, and strode back to Bree. "It's okay," Bree said with a smile. "Now that Santa needs a cold shower, we need to get back to our patients." Bree looked at Angie and smiled. "Teddy will be very upset that he won't be playing Santa this year," Bree said, grinning. "That'll teach the old perv," laughed Angie. I got dressed and met Angie and Erica in the lobby. "Boy, Santa's sleigh sure was dirty," I said loudly. "It took me forever to clean them out." "Leave it alone, Santa Bear," Angie said, laughing. I glanced over to Erica and we grinned at each other. Note to self: don't trust 5-year-olds to keep secrets. As we left, I noticed a few guys looking at Angie. I smirked, and Angie noticed it. "Meet any new friends while you were waiting for me in the lobby?" I teased. Angie snorted. "I think 3 guys tried to pick me up. I almost had to yell, 'Strange danger.'" As we drove back to her house, Angie quieted down. I drove them home and we had lunch together after they changed their clothes. Erica finally went to bed, and I was able to sit and talk to Angie. "So," she said, relaxing on her couch, "Erica asked for a pink bike?" I nodded. "Well, you're going to be a hero then. I already got it on an installment plan." We both smiled. "What about her other wish?" asked Angie quietly. "Sorry," I said, shaking my head. "Some secrets Santa Bear does keep." She looked at me and arched an eyebrow, then smiled. "Okay," she replied softly. "I won't pry too much." We talked for a while longer before we both fell silent again. "You know I meant what I said," she said softly. "I know." I sighed. That's the problem. Wow, I don't remember one of my lap dances being reacted to so unenthusiastically. "I'm sorry, but that's definitely not you." "Then what?" she asked, pulling herself up and looking at me intently. "Angie, please," I said, struggling with my thoughts. "Tommy boy, talk to me. Don't shut me out. We're best friends." "That's the problem, Angie. We're friends." I stared at her, hoping she'd leave it alone, but she didn't. "So, what exactly is the problem?" "Damn it, Angie," I said softly. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever met, but you have to understand something. The only reason I can flirt and tease you is because you've made it clear that we're just friends. I accept that, but if you ever really turned on the charm, I'd be confused. It would blur the lines and I don't know how I would react. I could easily embarrass us both. Tommy boy, I have complete faith in you. You're a great guy and a great friend. I know I would. Stop, Angie, I growled. Say the word safe, and I swear I'll vomit all over your living room. Okay, she said with a sad smile. I kind of understand, but you need to know why I suggested such a thing to you in the first place. First of all, I wanted to give you something special that I haven't given to anyone in a very long time. I'm not a slut, but I wanted to give you something personal. I know you desire me. I won't say it's not flattering because it is. Tommy boy, I'm more than an exhibitionist. And let's be honest, she said. I didn't do it to be overlooked by guys. What about Daniel? She leaned back in her chair and sighed. Daniel was exactly what I needed at the time. He was perfect. He was kind and gentle. I knew he was trying to get me into bed, but he cared enough about me to keep our affairs out of the public eye. The fact that he was handsome and very good in bed certainly helped too. In many ways, he was like you, Tommy boy. He was safe. I knew he loved me, as much as he was capable of loving at all. I had no illusions. Daniel Pickering is a wimp. His only real love is himself and being in front of the camera. He's a real attention seeker. Since I knew who I was dealing with, I was fine with our friendship for profit arrangement. But you have to understand, Tommy boy, I never had to try to seduce him or tease him. It was useless to him. He had to always be in control, or it became a power play or a game. That's not the way it is with you. You let me be in control most of the time. You take care of me, and more importantly, Eric. I never let Daniel anywhere near Erica. I didn't trust him that much. I also didn't want to confuse the situation. I trust you. Tommy boy, you are an honorable man. I know you're only human, but you're a good man. You don't want to hear it, but that's what makes you so special. Next to you, a girl can be herself without hiding emotions or thoughts that aren't considered appropriate. With you, a woman can be herself. This is very freeing and very desirable. Unfortunately, it also allows a woman to bring out her worst side, such as your ex-wife. Next chapter. The holidays can be an interesting time. The sight of all the lights and festivities can either inspire hope and excitement or make a person acutely aware of what is missing in their life. For me, it was a mixed bag. I always enjoyed the romance and promise of family when I was with Leah. The first holiday I experienced without her was during my divorce. Last year, the shock had passed, and I was well aware that I was divorced. It hurt to be alone, so I moved back home to Wisconsin and spent what little vacation I had with my family. This year, I decided to forego traveling and let some of my team members go away for the holidays. Armand went to visit relatives in New York, and Jonas took a week off to be with his family in the city. That left me looking after the nets we controlled and maintained. It wasn't terrible, but I was constantly thinking about Angie and Eric. Reluctantly, Angie returned to Dallas for Christmas. I could tell that because of what had happened in the past, she was still hesitant to come home. I guess I was expecting her to open up and tell me about it, but she didn't. I hoped she would confide in me after all. I was her friend. Of course, I wanted more. The Christmas ball and our conversation after the children's Christmas party was still on my mind, and in my dreams too. I found myself missing them. I wondered what they were doing and if they were okay. Okay, I'm not stupid. I knew I was falling in love. I already loved the little tyke, but I was sliding down the unenviable slope of falling in love into fantasy. Besides being a romantic fool, I'm also a realist, and I knew I was the one who would be hurt by all of this. And I knew being her friend was the best I could hope for, but maybe friends with benefits isn't much of a fantasy. I figured I could live with that, since it would allow me to be an important part of their lives. Since she offered me a lap dance as motivation, I figured I didn't seem too repulsive to her. Motivation, by the way, was working overtime as I was working out at least 5 times a week to keep the holiday pounds off. It made the time away from the Miles girls more bearable until I saw them on New Year's Eve. There was one surprise waiting for me during the holidays. It happened a couple days before Christmas. Leah called and asked if she could come over. I hesitated until she said she wanted to apologize for the Christmas ball and wasn't going to be late. Maybe it was the holiday spirit, or maybe I'd had some bad eggnog, but I agreed. When I opened the door, I was stunned. Leah had clearly put on makeup to show off her strengths and hide her flaws. Even with the added weight, she still looked good. I felt a stirring in my heart as well. The realization that somewhere in the back of my mind I still harbored old feelings for my ex-wife was disconcerting. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Tommy boy," she said softly. "Our last meeting didn't go very well." "I'm sorry. You surprised me." "I know, and I'm sorry. I wanted to say something, but we didn't start talking right away." "Leah," I said calmly, "we didn't end on a good note, so what made you think we'd start on one?" She didn't say anything, so I walked out the door and let her inside. She smiled uncertainly as she looked around the apartment. There were still a few things from our old apartment here that I hadn't had time to replace. "Some of it feels familiar," she said quietly. "I couldn't afford to replace all of it at first. And when I could, I decided that the money would be better spent on a house or new furniture." "Still dreaming of a house of your own?" she asked with a note of sadness. "Of course," I replied coldly. "You didn't steal all my dreams." I saw the pain on her face as she pulled herself together. "I'm very sorry about that, Tommy boy. More than you'll ever know." "Good, Leah." I sighed. "What do you want?" "It's the holidays, and I wanted to clear the air between us. It's been 2 years since the divorce, so the détente is irrelevant. I'm working on moving on with my life, and well, you were moving on before we even filed for divorce." "Yeah, I know. I was being a bitch then. I wish I could change that, but I can't. I also know that you've already stepped aside too. I heard about your run-in with Susie and the girl you were with, and of course about the beautiful blonde who was with you at the ball." "So?" Leah sighed. "It came out wrong, but I was trying to compliment you. I wanted to say that you look very attractive, and I'm a little jealous of your date." A few snide comments came to mind, but I held my tongue. "Your comments were cold, not that I didn't deserve them, but they were cruel nonetheless. For your information, I haven't dated Susie in over a year." "What, trouble in paradise?" Leah lowered her face. "Yes," she said softly. "You could say that. It would be more accurate to say that I finally pulled my head out of my big ass." I was again surprised that I hadn't said anything. Even more shocking was the thought that Angie would be proud of me. Before I could begin to introspect on these thoughts, Leah continued. "Tommy boy, I'm so sorry. I can't put into words how much I regret letting myself be taken away from you and ruining our marriage. I know it wasn't perfect, but at least you tried, and I just walked away. I got sucked into Susie's world and followed her down that path. It took a few hard blows to bring me to my senses." "Leah, I don't want to hear about your life." "Okay, I couldn't help myself. It was a cheap comment, but what the hell, she deserved it." "What? No, that's not what I meant. I was talking about what made me wake up and see what I had become." "We're divorced. You don't have to tell me." "I'm sorry, but I feel I have to. Of all the people my selfishness has hurt, I've hurt you the most. In fact, no matter how much I hurt you, it was my actions that hurt me the most, even if I didn't realize it at the time. I have to tell you that you were right. Right about a lot of things. You were right that my friendship with Susie was hurting me, us, and our marriage. I wish I'd seen it then." "You weren't going in blind, Leah. You knew what was going on and where it would lead." "Yeah, you're right. I followed with my eyes open. For a while I was caught up in the excitement, but it didn't last long. I plunged deeper and deeper until it all came crashing down about 6 months after our divorce was finalized. After one horrible weekend, my fantasy world collapsed. Remember Theo Hawthorne, my date to the Christmas ball?" I nodded. "Susie started dating his older cousin, Bryce Hawthorne. They were together at the Christmas ball. I'm sure you've seen them." She read my reaction. Yes, he's older than her by about 20 years. He also owns the Four Seasons Lodge and is very rich. Needless to say, Susie thinks she's found herself a sugar daddy. But this daddy has a beastly craving for sweets. He's really into the swinger scene. And that's not a bad thing, but he's also into other, much darker scenes. In one of those areas, he talked Susie into entertaining a group of his friends from time to time. She tried to get me to join her on one of those weekends. I will always be ashamed that I let her talk me into it once. After 2 days of classes I never even dreamed of, I looked at myself in the mirror. What I saw disgusted me. I was devastated. Not only had I thrown my marriage away, but I had lost all my self-respect. I can't tell you how ashamed and embarrassed I felt when I started talking to my family and those of our friends who could still relate to me. They all gave me their opinions and reminded me of how badly I treated you. I know it's too late, but I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to us. I'm sorry I ruined our dreams together. You may not want to hear this, but I still care about you very much. So what about Theo? I said in a calmer voice than I really was. Leah smiled weakly. Theo and I started dating shortly after that weekend. I was in a terrible state and he found out about the orgy from Bryce. He stopped by my place a couple times to make sure I was okay. Even though he's 10 years older than me, he's not a sugar daddy. We dated for about a year, but nothing exclusive. Leah snorted a disgusted laugh and continued. Theo and his firm-owned city lights and strobe. It's hard to be exclusive with a man who has girls throwing themselves at him all the time. Yeah, I said. It's damn hard to have a serious relationship with a man who doesn't mind a little side hustle every now and then. Leah's face lowered, and it looked like she was about to cry. Don't think I don't see the irony in that, she said weakly. Right now, I'm just trying to put the pieces of my life together. I know what I've done and what I've lost. Tommy boy, I'm afraid I'll always love you. I know we'll never be together again, but I want you to know that. Well, thank you for apologizing, and you're right. We'll never be together again. That shouldn't surprise you, though, because you're the one who tried to destroy me. You threw me and my love for you away like garbage. So no, we will never be a couple again. In fact, the thought of you and me ever being together again makes me want to puke. Besides, I said, calming myself down, I'm finally getting on with my life and things seem to be going well. Is that beautiful blonde you were with at the ball? Angie? Grinned I. No, we're just friends. Friends with benefits? I cast a glance at my ex-wife. None of your damn business. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, Tommy boy. But I could never compete with someone like her. Even Susie would be... You're wrong, I interrupted. None of you will ever be able to match Angie, and not because she's so damn gorgeous. It's because she has something none of you have. Character. She's no saint, but she would never betray the man she claims to love like that. She'd divorce his ass before she cheated on him. Even still, Leah, even before you ripped my heart out, you could more than compete with someone like Angie. Hell, you'd win every time. Yeah, sure, Leah snorted. Leah, until I met Angie, most people would have said Susie was the most beautiful woman I'd ever known. They would have been wrong. From the moment you confessed your love to me, no one could compare to you. After we became a couple, I never once made a pass or flirted with Susie. You were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. At least in my eyes you were. But you, I growled, you were always more concerned about what other people thought than you were about the guy who would love and marry you. You let some whore tell you that our love isn't worth fighting for, that it's your right to go out and date on the side. No matter what bullshit she or anyone else put in your head, at the end of the day, you're the one who gave up on us. It was you and your supposed love for me that wasn't strong enough to keep you from lying and cheating on me. This is the same love that caused you to give up and go looking for some stranger, never fighting for our marriage. It was your love that didn't protect us, didn't protect me. So you're saying you still love me doesn't mean a damn thing, I said, trying to calm down and control my breathing. I can do without your love. I know, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I guess I'm sorry, I continued, but I'm not quite sure what you expected or hoped for from this visit. I would wish you a good life, but that would be a lie. My Christmas wish is to hope that I never think of you again. Fortunately, I am succeeding in that. As for Susie, I hope that nasty bitch disappears from some other horrible disease. Leah stood up and walked quietly to the door. She opened it and stopped. Although she wasn't facing me, I could see her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. I'm so sorry, Tommy boy. I know it doesn't mean much right now, but I'm really sorry. I hope you find someone to love you the way you once loved me. I wanted to say something, but the only thing that came to mind was Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and they seemed rather hypocritical. I watched in silence as my ex-wife walked away. Maybe it was my behavior with Leah that was to blame, or maybe I missed Angie and Erica so much. But I ended up going back to Sacred Heart for Christmas wearing a Santa suit. With all the jumbled emotions bubbling up in my head, I needed a dose of reality, and I got it. There's something about being around other people who are having a harder time, and it helps to put your own problems into perspective. Seeing what these kids and their families were going through made my problems seem insignificant. That didn't mean that the frustration, bitterness, and pain associated with my divorce wasn't important. It just put it in perspective. It wasn't as overwhelming. My feelings for Angie and Erica were also exposed. If I didn't have the relationship with them that I wanted, it wouldn't devastate me. It would be disappointing and hurtful, but I would get over it. Watching a little girl awaiting a kidney transplant or looking into the eyes of a father whose baby boy has cancer will do that to you. It's that kind of, calm. I welcomed Angie and Erica back to Brownwood on New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, my peace of mind only lasted until midnight. Angie returned from Dallas tense and upset, but as the night progressed, she began to relax. We gathered at Mrs. Harper's house, located on the next block from Angie's house. There were several people here that Angie considered friends as well as neighbors. Surprisingly, there was no one from the gym. Angie seemed to keep her personal and professional lives very separate. I was surprised that Erica was still awake as midnight fell, until Angie told me Erica's secret. She said that Erica would love to take a longer nap so she could celebrate the new year with me. As we started the countdown, Erica made sure I had her in my arms. At midnight, we all shouted together, "Happy New Year!" Erica leaned over and kissed her mom, and then kissed me on the cheek. "Now you have to kiss me," she said, giggling. I kissed her forehead with a swoop and she squealed. "Now you have to kiss Mommy." "I don't know, Goldilocks," I said, laughing. "You never know what might happen if a princess kisses an ogre." "Tommy Bear, that only happens to frogs," she squeaked. "But that never happens. My friend Molly's mom says she kissed a whole bunch of frogs, but all she got were warts." I almost choked with laughter. Angie laughed first, and then Mama Bear. "Ernest, maybe we shouldn't hang out with Molly's mommy for a while," Angie said sternly. "Okay, Mommy," Mama Bear replied. Next chapter. Like most people, I rushed to the gym right after the holidays. While most people were trying to rid themselves of guilt and get in better shape, my motives were less noble. That kiss on New Year's Eve made me focus on losing the last 12 pounds. It also got my fantasies working at maximum capacity. I had one false start in January. I told Angie that I had reached my goal weight. She immediately informed me that losing weight without water doesn't count. Damn. Valentine's Day came and I asked the Miles girls out when things finally settled down. We went to the wharf. Since Valentine's Day fell on a Saturday, I was lucky enough to get a reservation in time. We had a nice evening. I asked Erica to be my Valentine, and her response was typical Erica. She giggled. "Tommy Bear, you're silly. I'm already your Valentine." There really wasn't much to say to that, right? After I drove them home, I cornered Angie before leaving and smiled. "I cooked the weight 2 days ago," I said, grinning. About damn time! She hissed and laughed. I'll see you tonight. I'll come over after Erica goes to bed, and Mrs. Harper can come over to see me. I stared at her in surprise. Mrs. Harper has been on duty at my place for the past 2 weeks, she said, grinning. After wishing each other good night, I seemed to float with anticipation all the way to my apartment. The next 90 minutes seemed like at least 3 hours to me. Finally, I heard a knock on the door. My fantasy had arrived. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.